theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive with Em and Warren.
Good afternoon, Suzy.
Good afternoon, Warren. Always good to be with you, our Joy Drive family on a Tuesday afternoon. Can you believe we are at the end of January?
I know. It's going so quickly.
Time flies when you're a bit older, I think.
It does. I wonder if time flew when we watched Velma this week on Binge. We'll find out very shortly, won't we, Suzy? Tell us about it.
2 girls at Crystal Cove High School are murdered, both with their brains removed. This all sounds much scarier than it actually feels when you're watching things unfold in Velma, because the show is an animated comedy full of jokes, even though macabre things are happening all the time. Velma, now streaming on Binge, is a new retelling of the origin story of characters from the Scooby-Doo cartoon series that first appeared on TV way back in 1969. Much has changed, not least of which is the way we think about femininity and sexuality. At the end of the second episode, Velma and Daphne share a kiss and begin their coming out narrative. This new series, however, is not all about queerness. The girls might be figuring out their attraction for one another, but they have many other important things to attend to. Velma needs to solve the mystery of her mother's disappearance, and Daphne's on a mission looking for her birth parents. Furthermore, Velma has Norville's and Fred's amorous attention to take care of. Yes, there is a lot happening. In fact, it is all a little overwhelming for me. Early episodes did make me laugh out loud several times, but as the story progresses, I find myself struggling to focus. I wonder if fans of animation would enjoy it better. Maybe it is a kind of film language that I'm not familiar with. Nonetheless, I'm thrilled that queer women of color are the show's main focus. Hopefully it'll find its audience and have a long life the way Scooby-Doo did. Em and Warren, is Velma what you expected it to be?
Before we get into what we thought, Suzy, we've asked the Joy Drive family to tell us what they thought, and we've had a message in from a number ending in 400, and it says, I saw the movie last week. What a brilliant suggestion and just an awesome time, which was, of course, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then, Suzy, they've said, this week with Velma, I asked for my money back. Dreadful. I've got to say, my sentiments are not potentially that strong, but I don't think I enjoyed it. And by I don't think, I didn't necessarily enjoy it. I think the big thing for me with this whole series was that it certainly is a dark comedy, as you mentioned in the intro, Suzy. But the thing that gets me about this is it kind of feels like it's trying to be, you know, a Big Mouth or a Rick and Morty or even so much as a Daria. It's got all of these influences of cartoons that do have this dark comedy, but there's just something about it that just, it almost feels a little bit too trying to be that, if that makes sense.
Did you feel like it was trying to tick every box?
I feel like, yeah, in a way, definitely. And I also feel like I think that, yeah, I don't know, there was something about the comedy, especially, yeah, as the series kind of progressed. It didn't feel like its own, sort of, if that makes sense.
I think it was trying to do too many things. It felt like it kind of didn't really, it kind of didn't sort of stay faithful to what the creators want. You kind of don't really know what the creators want to do with it. That's the problem. I feel like if the creators were stuck to their guns and kind of went, we really want to do this, and that's the point you want to make with this, and we'll do this. But, you know, we've seen, 6 episodes, and it just runs all over the shop all the time. And like, my mind is struggling to make sense of it, but I thought maybe it's a genre thing. Maybe it's a style of TV that I'm not used to.
I mean, last week when we watched the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, I mean, that started off quite chaotic, but the chaos was kind of easy to watch and you could just let it go and enjoy it, and then it all came together. I agree with you both. I felt like this one, Velma, that there were just too many stories at once, like you said. And, you know, we had the brains, we had the missing mum, we had the biological parents going on. There was so much going on.
Hallucinations.
And I just wanted to know where Scooby was and when does Scooby come in?
Well,
I think they sort of tease a little bit, like Scooby-Doo probably is going to come in later. But we're not sure, and I'm not sure if any of the three of us are going to stick around to find out.
No, and maybe that's it.
But I think, you know, as you mentioned, Suzy, I'm also not a cartoon person. A friend of mine recently suggested a different series and was talking about the storyline of it, and I was like, oh yeah, it sounds all right. And then they were like, oh yeah, it's a cartoon. And I was like, oh, I just can't really get around to cartoon. I'm sorry. It's just, I don't know what it is. Cartoons just don't connect as much with me.
The only one I watch religiously is South Park, and I have done since the 90s. Nothing else seems to have worked for me. Like, there have been many, many big hits, haven't there? Like, what's that? American Dad? That sort of stuff that are made for sort of for grown-ups. None of it has really spoken to me quite as much as South Park has spoken to me. I also think back to my childhood about how I kind of got out of cartoons really early. As soon as I discovered pop music, ABBA and Bee Gees, I was very young, and I was already like, oh, I'm no longer interested in Mickey and Minnie. So maybe it's just something that doesn't work for me.
The thing about all of the titles that we've mentioned, you just brought up American Dad and South Park, and I said earlier, Big Mouth, Rick and Morty, Daria. It feels like in these sort of like dark comedy series, the idea of making it a cartoon seems to be a thought about choice, because they want to do stuff that's like so outlandish and so disturbing that if we saw it in real life, it would literally be like insane and we wouldn't want to be watching it. So I feel like the fact it's a cartoon meant that they could push the boundaries the way that they did in this series in VELMA. But I don't necessarily think that was for the best.
I kept feeling like they didn't push it. And I thought, oh, are they aiming for a younger crowd? And then you hear a song that, repeats MF, MF the whole time. And I'm thinking, oh no, it's not for young people, but why are they being so safe with the story? Like, why are they being so kind of tweeny about it? So, it kind of, again, it just doesn't feel like it knows what it wants to be, and it's kind of not going very hardcore with anything in particular. So it all feels really lukewarm and half-hearted everywhere.
We are talking to Suzy Wrong about VELMA, which is currently streaming on Binge. I mean, you got to admit that VELMA is a great character, and I just feel like they missed an opportunity to really explore the character. And you look at how VELMA is quite different to other kids, and I mean that could have been explored. But then you get these hallucinations that just blow everything out of the water and interrupt the whole storyline. So I didn't like it at all. I just feel like it was such a missed opportunity. I think VELMA was so cool in Scooby-Doo, and they could have explored so much more.
Yeah, I think we are all right, because I literally went back and tried to watch it again, trying to focus and figure out what its appeal might be. Even the second time around, I found my mind just couldn't make sense of it, and I just wandered away the whole time, especially after the first two episodes. I think the first two episodes, when it was trying to establish something, it was okay. But once it felt like it established characters and tried to go out into the various tangents, it was just too tangential. It was just too much, too many little bits that kind of none of it felt very important. None of it felt particularly interesting.
Well, Suzy, you win some, you lose some. It was a 10 out of 10 last week, and not a 10 out of 10 this week.
What was it? What did you give it out of 10, Em?
I just won't do that.
I give it a 2.
Savage. Suzy, what are we watching next week?
Commander Fort is a docu-series on Disney Plus about Argentinian gay icon Ricardo Fort, famous for being super rich and for all the extraordinary physical alterations he had undertaken to achieve the appearance of the perfect man. So go to Disney Plus and look for Commander Fort. It's a 4-part series. I saw that yesterday, and there's going to be so much to talk about.
Oh, looking forward to it, Suzy.
Thank you, and I'll see you next Tuesday.